All right, there she is. Um, Today we got Whitney McKoy, once an HR business partner of mine, a beacon of positivity and leadership. She's recently traversed from the heart and soul of Kentucky, now on the sunny beaches of Florida. Whitney's a University of Kentucky graduate for undergrad, her master's from Morehead State.
Yeah.
Um, Started her career in humble little blessings daycare. She'd navigated through roles at Nielsen Media Research, Best Buy, worked as an assistant store manager at another place, pretty big, grocery type of organization, and a few others. Known for her selfishness and unparalleled professionalism, Whitney's impacted many, a source of unwavering support, true embodiment to the values of a servant leader. And she has wicked positivity. All right. So when I say wicked positivity, I don't mean that lightly. Um, in every situation, she kind of tries to find that, and is committed to giving everyone a voice. Outside of work, she's an advocate for ethical fashion, loves to travel, and a proud brand ambassador for Seco Designs. So,
Yes. That's kind of not technically anymore. Now Seiko Designs belongs to Noonday Collection for anyone who wants to get into ethical fashion. And I have some other relationships I've built from those experiences that allow me to support, and we can talk about that. But
when you
Seiko
say
Design.
ethical fashion, what's the difference between normal fashion and ethical fashion?
So ethical fashion means you're not buying from big boxes like big producers. For instance, um, a few years back, I won't get too detailed because we don't want to take this into politics, but there was a campaign that really made America look at how they treat women. That really started some of the gender awareness that's going on in society. And I decided I did not want to purchase items from people who don't use them. So, for instance, why would I buy a woman's handbag from a man? Like, if the man's not carrying the handbag, why is his name on my handbag? So, I started buying women owned businesses, which is
Okay.
what led me into Seiko Designs. So, ethical fashion or slow fashion is just harnessing the power of your dollar for good. So,
Okay.
instead of me
So,
purchasing, yeah, so instead
values
of me
based.
yeah, exactly. So instead of me purchasing, a handbag from some big name label that's making millions of dollars a year and you're carrying, for the brand, I like to buy like handmade leather bags from artisans in like Guatemala or Uganda because I know that that bag purchase is helping them like put food on the table or pay their rent or mortgage for the month, or send their kids to school. I have a friend who makes these earrings out of Texas. She's a black owned business, and my purchases send her kids to karate,
What's it
allow her
called?
to travel. It's made with love, Carissa, for anybody who wants to join us.
All right. Yeah.
I'm
Go buy some of
also,
that stuff, everybody.
yeah, it's really good. She's got a Facebook group. I am like a brand ambassador there. And we always just talk about, slow fashion and the power behind the dollar. I think a lot of people underestimate what you can do if you harness your dollars and put them where you want to put them.
Yeah.
And so that's what got me into ethical fashion.
Not
They call it slow
necessarily
fashion.
going for the cheapest thing, but putting some value and support behind it on the other end. Right.
Yes. These
Gotcha.
earrings are pretty inexpensive, so don't let that deter anyone. But like my handbags probably aren't as cheap as maybe you could find some of the others. But again, it's a bigger impact. They're buying less leather. Most of the leather is ethically sourced. And so it's a better feel good. You
Gotcha.
know, um, and I'll give you this anecdote. So I was in Guatemala last October, visiting some of the artisans who make some of the items that I love, and we met a woman named Siggy who has a gorgeous store called Casa de los Gigantes, which means House of the Giants, which I love. And she talked about how people understand the energy and love being put into something people make when they cook food. Food tastes different when your mom makes it, right? Because, you can taste like the love that's put into it and the energy, like you feel good when you sit down and eat the food your mom has made versus if, someone you don't know makes the food, like the love is not there. And so people have a better understanding. They can grasp the concept of the energy in like homemade food, but it's the same thing applies to clothes, right? So if
Yeah.
I buy a pair of earrings that I know the maker and I know, the relationship is there, the energy in the earrings are different. Whereas if
Yeah.
I just buy them like off the store, and that helps me kind of understand that's where the feel good comes from, right? Because the love and energy that has been put into making this is different than someone who's like on a line mass producing the same exact item for, hundreds and thousands of people to purchase. And
Yeah.
so that's a good little
Gotcha.
anecdote. Yeah.
I You triggered something for me, so I got to bring it up. It
Okay.
was like, so the other day I made tacos,
Okay.
and I don't make tacos very often. I don't cook very
Ooh,
often.
we
I'm getting
love
into it.
tacos.
I'm learning how to cook right
Okay,
now.
let's go.
So I made tacos, and my wife's like, "Man, those are good. Like, I like your tacos better than mine." I was like,
I
"No
love
way!
it.
Like, I like yours better than the ones." So,
See,
so
but it's different, right? Because you can feel the love. Like when we cook, you're like, oh, that was exhausting. Like it's a different experience. But you
yeah,
know, when someone like preps it for you, and you know it's made with love, and you know what they sacrificed, and you know they've researched and made this recipe and tweaked it. Like it lands different for the person. It's a different emotional experience. And the same thing applies to clothes and accessories and purses. And so
and that's a big part of your ambassador for whatever
it
kind of brand
is.
ambassador stuff. So,
Yeah.
well, cool. Let's roll into memories. So, I got a few
Okay.
memories. The first one's from Glenise Brand. We called her Nisi, ops supervisor under your
Nisi.
guidance for several years in a couple of different job locations.
Couple of different jobs. Yes. Big fan of
She
Nisi.
she said, you're the ultimate professional in the job, knows the business like no other. She can also light up a room with a smile, makes everybody around here feel comfortable. Whitney's also a resident trivia person and foodie. I
That's
never,
facts.
I never knew that I needed in my life. And you were actually on the trivia piece. You were on a trivia game show once, right?
My family and I were on Family Feud. It was quite the experience. And if you ever have the opportunity, please, by all means, audition and try to get on the show. It wasn't the best outcome. We only got to play one game, but it was a fantastic time. Everybody gets a prize. You get a trip to Atlanta to record. And it was a really great experience for my family. It was my mother, myself, my sister, my cousin, and my aunt.
Yeah.
And you get to dress alike and you get to meet all the other families. You get to meet Steve Harvey, who was hilarious, very tall, very handsome, smells fantastic. And so it is fun. So, however, it did give me like low key PTSD. And so I can't play Family Feud anymore. I immediately am stressed out,
Just because
but
you
I can,
lost, or
yeah,
what? Why? Oh, okay.
probably lost. And you're immediately back. Like the lights are in your face. All these people are watching you. Like I just am immediately back there and start to lose my breath. So I can't play Family Feud, but I can be Steve Harvey. So now I'm eternally the host, and so I will host a trivia game in a minute,
Yeah.
but I don't play as much.
Do you have a copy of that episode? Could I attach it to
I,
this
I
podcast?
don't. I don't have a copy, unfortunately, because
Okay.
this was before like things were really cool with like hard drives and stuff. I know that we played. It was the McKinney family versus the Boudreaux family, and it's really hard to find now because there have been so many seasons. But if anybody ever wants to Google that and dig really deep, or if you ever find some Family Feud archives, we used to be able to Google and find it. And when we get off, I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, I'll
But
attach
no
it to it if you
promises.
can find it.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, it's not something I want to advertise. It wasn't
it's
but I mean,
fun.
it's still a once in a lifetime opportunity, and it was a fantastic time. I'd do it again. But
Cool.
that is why I'm eternally the trivia. And thanks, Nisi, so much for those kind words. Nisi is awesome. Nisi has worked with me in 2 different companies. And she's a good friend. She is very professional. She's a really good people manager. So glad to hear.
Gotcha. More from her. She said you bring fun to any function, whether it be a monthly team meeting or just a small celebration for someone's accomplishment. Having Whitney as a mentor over the years taught me much about the quiet, no nonsense, professional approach to talking to team members while still treating them with dignity and respect. I never
Yes.
saw her lose her cool when the people she was speaking to lost theirs. She was the ultimate professional. I'm proud to know her and forever grateful to have her as a friend. So.
Nice. It's a talent. It's a talent to be able to still treat someone with compassion and dignity, even though they are not doing that to you.
No doubt.
So.
Rebecca Riordan, so another supervisor inside those 4 walls. Let's see. She said, "Your amazing smile, no matter what room she walked into or situation she encountered, she always brought positivity." Theme. She always saw the big picture, was willing to help in any way she could, no matter the day or the hour. She listened with intent and made other people feel like they were the most important person in the room when talking to her. Whitney's attitude's top notch, fair, authentic, cares, and embodies the values of a servant leader. Needless to say, I'm a Whitney fan, is what she said.
That's so kind, Rebecca. Thank you. I'm a Rebecca fan. She's so kind.
All right, Bakari, Fugels. One of the main things that sticks out about Whitney is her passion for the workforce and legitimately wanting to make sure the team has a voice. She's always ahead of the curve on how we can better serve the people. that we lead. It's an amazing source of knowledge when it comes through, and when it comes to navigating the gray areas. She'll go far in her career for sure.
Thanks, Bakari. He's so kind too. These are so nice. It's me. Okay, not tearing up.
3 more. All right, next
Okay.
one's Tony Burns, a fellow
Love Tony
peer.
Burns. Yes, HR mentor of mine.
Yeah, she's
Strong leader.
definitely a baller. She supported me
She
for a couple years.
is. We love her.
Whitney's easily one of the most selfless people I know. She's always given her time, energy, and heart to others, and always one step ahead of those that she loves, anticipating their needs and offering help where needed. She's also gives me a different perspective on life, including giving people more of the benefit of the doubt than I would initially. Anyways, I witnessed firsthand how deep she loves her family, friends, and it's really like no other. So very blessed to have a coworker and turn forever friend in Whitney.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tony. She is awesome. We are definitely personal friends. That's a success story for people you meet at work and they bleed over into your personal life and get to be friends. Tony's a success story there.
Yeah, that's good stuff. The next two, kind of a blast from the past. First one's Linda Albright.
Linda,
a boss from a previous employer, I think Matulsa.
Yes, also a boss. Linda used to sit in the cubicle across from me. So when I started at Matulsa, they had cubicles and Linda was literally across from me and is now the boss, like the HR. I'm not sure what the title is there, but she's like the HR director for the Matulsa plant. So
it's a big place.
She's a super boss. Little under 3,000 employees, unless they've grown since I've been gone.
Yeah.
She's a strong leader. She's got a good team.
Awesome. She said, Whit is one of the most genuinely warm and outgoing people I've ever met. She feels her emotions super big and pours herself into her relationships. Despite facing many personal losses and challenges, she never appears bitter or allows that to take away from the bright light of the human that she is. 100%, without a doubt. Even if gone months without seeing her, I know I could count on her for anything. I know this because I personally experienced it in the past month when I went through something myself, pretty sudden and debating loss. She's a joy to have as a friend, and I'm thankful for the world has people like her in it. We are better for it.
She's so kind. That's going to make me cry. She did not experience a big loss. She had a big life change that was for the better. I hope she hears that when she listens to this. And I'm glad to hear that, I worked with Linda when I went through a really dark time. I lost a brother and I was really dark inside. So it's good to hear that maybe I did a pretty okay job of not letting that affect my professional life, because she was there for me. That whole team was really there for me when I went through that, and I'm really grateful. That's why you have to pour into people, right? Like relationships are very important. That's like relationships are the currency, of life, and you pour into people because when you meet them, they pour back into you. And every time I think about my brother, my cousin that I lost, and that time, I always think about how kind they were at work, and they brought groceries to my house, and they sent me cards. They sent me home when I was stressed, and I appreciate that. Was definitely an environment. So I'm glad to hear that I was still bright, because I probably inside didn't start feeling happy again, giving myself permission to feel joy after this loss, probably until like last year, 2 years ago. Grief is crazy, and that's a whole other podcast topic. I don't know if and I don't want anyone to ever experience it, but for anyone who's listening to this and has experienced like true grief, losing somebody really close to you, it's wild the impact it has on every step of your life. It's so sneaky, like you're just driving down the road and all of a sudden you're crying, or you're at work and all of a sudden you're crying, and it's crazy. So
you listen to that Rebecca episode?
Not yet. I'm going to.
Really?
I meant to. I started it, but I haven't finished it. So if there was a grief portion.
Yeah, she lost her brother as well.
See, he was my cousin, but he was like a brother. He was an only child, so he spent a lot of time with us growing up, and he was such a light. Like people love me. They see my positivity. They see my light. But my entire family is really like that. And if there was anyone in my family that was really comparable, it was him. His name's Dontrez Dawson, and he was so fun and so positive and such a light, and it was such a loss, and it really impacted like me and my family. We were really dark. You have to fight really hard to get out of those spaces. I mean, I come from a family of fighters. You know, we're doing okay. My aunt, his mom, we're doing okay, but it gets really dark. And so I'm glad to hear, you know, so many people say so many things, because sometimes when you're in those spaces, it influences how you see yourself. You start to worry about like how you're showing up and how good of a friend you're being, how good of a worker you're being, how good of a fiance you're being, how good of a sister you're being. So glad
Yeah.
to hear that it's okay. But I appreciate those words from Linda, because I was I would when I worked there, probably my last year, 2 years there, I was a different person after that loss, and so
You
glad to
mind
hear that.
you
Go
mind
ahead.
if I ask, how'd you lose him?
He was in a car accident
Dang.
coming home from Lexington. Something just maybe caused him to jerk his car and lose control. And it was heavy. That's the worst, you know. That's the worst, but I guess
Unexpected.
it's not
Yeah.
the worst. Yeah, it was completely 100% expected. I was coming home from exercising. Here's a not a funny story, but when I got the phone call that he had passed, I was coming home from exercising, and I had just stopped at McDonald's and bought a Happy Meal. Like the irony, and I didn't eat Happy Meals honestly for like 2 years after this loss. He passed in 2021, I believe. I think it was 2021 or 2020. All the years run together now, but I didn't eat Happy Meals for like 2 years, because every time I pulled into a McDonald's to get one, I was immediately back there. Um, and so you just remember, you know, everything you start to associate like with this grief and with this loss. But he
Yeah.
was he was so happy, and he would want us to celebrate, and he would want us to move on. He was such a leader, like, and there were like over 200 people at his going away service, and they were streaming it, and like he impacted so many lives. It was honestly like it's an inspiration, right? Like while you're here, because you don't know when you're gonna leave. So while you're here, you have to do what you can, and you harness it. He was such a liver. He traveled. I lived in Lexington and Frankfurt, and he would just pop up at my house. He'd give me like a 30-minute heads up, and he'd be in my driveway. Like he was just always moving. He always made it a point to see his family. And so we adored him. Big loss, big loss. And you know, they don't teach you like how to handle that or what to do, and they don't teach you how hard and heavy grief is. And so just for anybody who's listening that's experienced grief, it's normal, it's crazy, but you know, somebody told me that you know, you can't get rid of grief, like you just have to learn to accept it. And so when it comes, I'm just like, oh, Don Trez, like I appreciate it because I'll never forget him. And so it's always nice to have the reminders of like this impact and this influence I had in my life, and this love that I've lost, but not really. You know, like he's in heaven, and he's watching me, and he's sending me things, you know, and so he's sending me love. You know, I got engaged to my fiance. I met my fiance and got engaged after Don Trez passed, and he used to always talk to me about getting married. So I'm like, oh, he probably had something to do with that, and so you know, some things that I believe, you know, that help me like day to day, but
You ever think that he's trying to communicate with you? Because I just got done with Jimbo, and he's
yeah.
got a situation like that too.
I don't. So I will tell you, I don't think that not day to day. I dream about him sometimes, and I think when he pops up in my dreams, it's like him saying hi.
Hmm.
When he passed, I was dreaming about him every night, and I have a real sensitivity to my dreams and nightmares. Like
Nice.
I already sleep pretty light, and so I always, when I was younger, and I've always had this. I had another Dominic Bonanno when I was in high school passed away, and we were pretty good friends. And when he passed away, I dreamed about him a lot. And my mom used to be like, you need to pray, you need to pray. And no offense to anyone who's not a Christian. I come from a Christian family. I do believe in Christianity. I believe in God. And so my mom was like, you need to pray. So I had to start praying so that I could like sleep and have some calmness. So when Don Trez passed away, it was just so fresh. It was so new, and I wasn't sleeping. For like 3 months, I wasn't sleeping. I would medicate to sleep. So I would alternate between like Benadryl and melatonin just to try to give myself like 4 or 5 hours. And I had a grief counselor finally, which I 100% advocate for. And she said, tell him to stop visiting you in your dreams. She said, tell him he can come as a butterfly. Tell him he can come as a cardinal. But she said, you know, tell him, hey, you have to stop visiting me in my dreams. Like I'm not sleeping. And she was like, tell him this, like, just tell him to give you a minute. And I
Yeah.
was like, wow, okay. And so I did that, and I immediately started like sleeping
Nice.
again. Yeah. And so now when he visits me in my dreams, it's really positive. It's not as often because, you know, I'm much easier to talk about. Probably a year ago, 2 years ago, you couldn't have paid me to get to this podcast and discuss it without ugly crying, like snotting, ugly crying. knees to chest, like despair at this loss. But he doesn't deserve that. He deserves to be like saying from the rooftops. He was a fantastic human being, and he was a fantastic family member. He's a fantastic cousin, brother, person, and so he deserves for his memory to be like shouted. And so I'm glad that I can talk about it now and not feel the sadness, because I want him to be celebrated, and I would want to be celebrated. And you say that like when I pass, I want my family, like I don't want them to be sad, and it's so hard because I know he wouldn't want us to be sad. He was never a sad person. Like he was such a happy, positive person. But it's hard. You're like, I'm trying to do this, but I can't because it's such a grave loss, But he's a fantastic person, and but it was such a loss. And so good to hear. I'll bring us back. Good to hear that Linda didn't see the darkness, because they definitely made a space for it, and she did get to see some of it. But I did try to show up still in my day to day. So good to hear.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for unpacking a little bit of that with us. It's not easy, but I appreciate it. Ashley Holt, last one in the memory section. University of Kentucky Extension peer turned bestie. Y'all go way back to that. And she said she was my intern while in college, then became full-time. Ashley could really feel y'all's relationship blossom as you both worked together. Y'all complemented each other in a lot of different ways, strengths and weaknesses wise, to help you grow together pretty quick. Whitney being, is extrovertedly fun personality type of, what you are. And Ashley was more of the logistics introvert of the duo, that y'all lean on each other often, really worked well together. Whitney helped me find a sort of articulation for my voice. When working together, she watched you demonstrate this talent, and she wanted that trait from you. What still teaches me to this day, her posture, attitude, and agency. Ashley now tells herself, I'm going to put my Whitney on today.
Let's do that.
And is thankful for that lesson. So
yes, she's a fantastic person. It is really nice. They say that Ashley's a soulmate of mine. They teach you like, maybe your soulmates are like opposite sex, or they're supposed to be like romantic relationships. But sometimes you just meet people, and the meshing there is so organic. Like you just work well together. Their preferences match like your least preferences, and your preferences, match like their like things they wouldn't want to do. And you really come together to make like this mega team. And that was Ashley and I. Aside from the fact that we get along very well and we have so much fun together, like where I would maybe need some assistance, she flourishes. And so it does. I was her intern. I was her intern in Louisville for a summer. And then I went on to work full time for the same company, UK's Extension, which I did for 8 years prior to moving full time into HR. And we did so much programming together because it was so fun to us still. So it wasn't like work. Like anytime I was with Ashley, we had a great time. We worked on a lot of kids. We impacted a lot of kids' lives together. We took them to DC. We took them to farms. You do a lot of, because we're urban, right? So I'm African-American female, for those of you who won't see the YouTube with this clip. And so Ashley's also an African-American female, and we were hired in UK's Extension to help broaden the programming to people from our similar backgrounds. Historically, 4-H is for more rural children who grow up on farms. There's hams and cows and goats and, horses. And so people who don't grow up in rural settings miss out on a lot of that leadership development. And so Ashley and I were hired to help implement and make some of that non-traditional programming traditional, and then bring some of the traditional programming to non-traditional audiences. And so we had a lot of fun doing that. And so that was a really good time. But Ashley is a fantastic person, and she makes work not work, right? So I loved being with her. We had a good time. And we haven't worked together since 2016, but are still very much best friends, definitely in my inner circle. She actually just got a kidney. So shout out to Ashley, and for everyone who's on the organ donation. She was in kidney failure and actually just had surgery for her first and last kidney transplant 3 weeks ago. So she's home and like on the medicine and healing. So
nice.
Really grateful to have her still, and for her to be like on this successful journey. And just a plug for people who are experiencing, anybody who maybe needs like an organ donation. You see that as you're growing up, and like when you get your driver's license, they're like, donate an organ. But until it's like in your face, one of your beloved family members who like need a kidney, you're like, wow, the impact. And so for anyone's listening, who's not, donate an organ, save a life when you pass. Somebody saved Ashley's life, and we are really grateful. And I tried to give her one of my kidneys, just a little anecdote as well. But the doctor, they like, you call and you fill out a form, you send it in, and they call and do like an over the phone interview first. And the doctor was asking me about like my health and my age and my weight and everything. And he was like, you should probably keep your kidneys because you're going to potentially need them. So before he could even see if I was a match, he was like, you don't need to give your kidneys up. So
to be a match for something like that, what, same blood type? And
yes, I believe so. And I don't even know, because I think she had a pretty maybe odd blood type, but you have to be the same blood type. And then your organs have to be healthy. Because I think, we have a spare kidney. So you have 2 kidneys, you can give up 1. But they just make sure that you don't need it. But
Gotcha.
they didn't even check my blood type first. They evaluate to make sure that
like,
your kidneys,
okay.
Your kidney's even a spare before they're like, okay, she could use it. And so she had a lot of people trying, but we did end up finding, because they say living donors are better. So if you get the kidney from someone who's still alive, it's a little better than, trying to get one from someone who passed. But she did end up getting someone. And it's been I think she's been on this journey for 3 years. And so it took 3 years. Yeah. So a lot of prayers and tears and crying and medicines and hospitalizations. And so I'm so happy. Yeah. So she's a blessing, and I'm blessed to still have her, blessed to have her. And we are an awesome mega team, Whit and Ash. They loved us. Hopefully we'll work together again one day.
Cool. All right. That's in the memory section. And this is where I say, tell us the Whitney story.
Okay. Well, it's so hard to always do this. My name is Whitney. I live in Jacksonville, Florida. I've been here for 5 months. I don't know. I'm a hilarious person. I like to have fun. I do appreciate all those memories. I do think that I do make it a point to be pretty positive. I think I learned at a really young age that the only thing I can control is myself. My mom taught me that, the only thing you can control is yourself. And so I've always made it a very intentional about, putting on a happy face, putting on a brave face, putting on a positive face. I have 2 dogs who are awesome, and I have a fiance. We're getting married in 9 days. So by the time this
in Jamaica,
airs,
right?
Yes, in Jamaica, on the beach in Negril, Jamaica. We're going to the Dominican Republic for our honeymoon. So by the time this airs, I'll be Mrs. Fabian, and I'll have all of that drama and stress behind me. That also could be a whole nother podcast topic, like wedding planning and the relationships you learn about when you're wedding planning, but not for this one. But let's see, I started out in extension, so we kind of just touched on that. Thanks for covering my background. I have 2 degrees. I have a bachelor's from the University of Kentucky. I have a master's from Morehead State University. So many interesting stories. My master's is a success story. I had to end up going to Morehead because there was a professor at the University of Kentucky who did not want to let me graduate. So I literally had to transfer programs to finish my master's degree. Once I completed my master's degree, I moved on to the big grocery retailer you referenced, where I worked for 2 years as a store manager. Learned a lot there. I met the manager. So I was working in extension. I was at a conference, and the HR person for the major retailer, the HR person for this, let's just call it grocery store, for the grocery store was one of the judges for a competition. They were one of the sponsors. So he heard me presenting, and he walked up to me afterwards, and he said, you're going to have my job one day. And I said, that sounds fantastic. And he was like, great. And so we started meeting. We probably met once every other month. He would bring me to the stores, walk me around the stores, talk to me about the program. This grocery store had a mantra that they were not hiring managers, they were hiring leaders. And so he recognized that I was a leader. He said, I can't teach, it's hard to teach someone to be a good leader. It's not hard, but it's really hard. It's easier to teach someone the business than it is how to people manage. So when they have someone who knows how to people manage, it's easy to teach them the business. So that's how I got moved into the grocery retail world. I was an assistant store manager for HR. And it was really interesting because you are HR, but at its core, you're really running a grocery store. And so I was stocking spice aisles and stocking freezers and, checking produce for rotting produce. Like you're running a grocery store, and that's the priority. The customer will always be the priority. So it really, some of the other aspects of HR really take a back seat to running a grocery store. You also work every holiday that someone's eating. And so I decided that wasn't for me because I was getting really sad of missing all the holidays. I didn't get to travel for Thanksgiving for like 2 years. And my dad's side of the family lives in North Carolina, and I didn't see my grandma there for 2 years. And that's when I knew that I needed to kind of go somewhere else. And so that was fascinating.
So at that pretty big responsibility,
Yes.
Assistant store manager in this chain, what were some key learnings from that experience? Good, bad, whatever, like something most memorable that sticks out to you that when you walked away from that, I learned something today. What was that?
Okay. From the grocery store, I learned a lot while I was there. It was my first union experience. So for anyone who's listening, they've ever worked in a union or worked in a union environment, it's just different. But this grocery store is big in the world, one of the bigger unions, and so I learned a lot about that relationship. I had a union steward there who was so mean, and part of their role is just to not be kind. To the point, the first time I met him, my boss had typed up a list, like an attendance dossier, but like an attendance policy essentially. And it was the exact pull from the contract, but it was just like, if you miss, this is what's going to happen. The nice thing for me is when I started at this grocery store, the new store manager had started a week before. So we were able to walk in and both be new and like develop a relationship. So I didn't have the weight of like everybody was learning the manager. And so it's not like people, there were no favorites. There was nobody who knew what she liked and didn't like. We were all learning her. And so that was really nice. And the union steward, they walked him up, they introduced him, and he was like, "I'm glad you're here. Nice to meet you." He didn't say that, but he like brushed me off, and he was like, "I wanted to talk about this attendance form." And I was like, "Oh, it's just a policy just to help employees understand what they can do and what they can't do." And he was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, you tell your store manager, this is what I think about that." And he balled it up in a ball and like basketball shot it into the trash can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely their job.
Yeah. So that was my first experience with the union. So I learned that from the grocery store. And, I touched on prioritizing, and it helped me learn that while I love HR, I love people managing, I love working with people, I enjoy the aspect of my job that allows me to help like rationalize people's actions, and, how we should handle situations. I love the strategic part of my role. You are still running a grocery store, and that's just always the main point there. So you're always going to need to go talk to a customer who's complaining downstairs. They're always going to try to scam you. The loss prevention at the grocery store was fantastic. Shout out to Mr. Dave. We had the loss prevention there. I worked at a store that was in downtown Louisville, around the Churchill Downs area, and so it's an interesting area to be in, right? In Louisville, it's fantastic, but there's a lot of
I know what you're talking about exactly. And I remember
it's
lots
a lot
of headlines from that area.
Yes, a lot of various socioeconomic statuses there, and so we got a lot of homeless people who would come into the store. They would hang out in the store. Sometimes they use it as a cover. So much that we would develop relationships. So we were on like first name basis, and as long as they weren't causing any trouble, we would let them stay. It's a community place. We're open for business, no big deal. We had one that would come in. He would ride a bike or he'd be on foot, and he'd come in, and he would stuff the meat like down his pants and like in his shirt, and then would try to exit the store. And I would always be like, his name was Willie. I was like, "Willie, what's like in your pants?" I could see like the Pringles can like poking out the back of his shirt, and I would just always stop him, make him give us our stuff back. But Mr. Dave, the loss prevention there, and there were a variety of them. Mr. Dave was just my favorite. They're the only ones that are really allowed to have like aggressive interactions or to like really go for the product that they're taking out. I don't want to give away any like grocery store secrets, but there's a couple of hot spots that they always watch because the probability of them being stolen is higher, right? Because they go faster on the black market. For instance, Tide is one. So I didn't know that. Exactly, right. I didn't know that when I started working. but apparently
That'd be
you
a
can
hard
buy.
one to sneak.
Oh,
It's
you
kind
would
of
be
bulky.
you can sell Tide apparently on the black market for top dollar.
I
They
wonder
sell
why.
it.
Is it like a drug making chemical?
No, I don't think so. I just think that there's probably a lot of stay-at-home mom. Everybody washes clothes, right? So everybody
Yeah.
needs Tide. So if you steal it and then sell it for $5 less than what we're selling it in the grocery store, it moves really fast. I mean, you think it would be hard to. I don't think they can make drugs from it. You think it would be hard to move, but they are so creative, right? Like they come in and they'll stack a cart and like put things strategically around it. So it might be like lined with like sodas, but the inside is just nothing but like 15 Tide Pod canisters, right? Like the big round plastic ones. And they just roll out the store with it. They'll just push out the store and hope that nobody notices.
Hmm.
And so, that was really fascinating. Just some of
Interesting.
the razors. Yep, razors are another one. And so if you guys, it is fascinating. And so I learned that, and the loss prevention was a really exciting, fun aspect. And I got to experience a lot at my store because of where we were. So we had a really strong presence.
Yeah.
And those tactics were just really fascinating. So I that was really nice to kind of experience when you come from like it was my first retail position period. So I have had a lot of jobs. You named that in the beginning. I love money. I love to make money. Sometimes I'd rather make it than save it. So if I need something, like I'd rather pick up a side hustle and work really hard to earn the money than like to keep one job and deprive myself from like that DoorDash or that pair of shoes for 3 months I can save like for a wedding or something. And so I have had a lot of jobs. I worked at Best Buy, but the grocery store was the first grocery retail. Sorry. And so it just it's a different world, and the idea that people eat and the people you meet and the scams people try to pull and the things you see, there I have a dozen hundreds of stories. And then I did learn a lot. So when I left the grocery store, my most it was probably I learned a lot in my career. I grew a lot. So when I worked there, I was I'm 35 now, so I was 28 to 30 maybe. And so you're growing as a person. For anyone who's experienced like who remembers that point in your life, like 28 to 32 is really like a transition of age, coming of age, authentic full-fledged adult. You're no longer like there's no college, no young person. You're old. You're going to bed at 9. You're paying authentic bills. And so I was really coming of age, and I was really into into my career and focused on my career. And I had never really been in trouble. So I'm a fun person. I am pretty positive. I am also pretty opinionated. Sometimes I've maybe different in opinions with peers or coworkers, and that has gotten me spoken to. Since I worked at the grocery store, I took this store through a remodel. So when I started, they were maybe 130 employees. After 2 years, and like a $1.5 million remodel, we're this big mega grocery store that has all the fancy like eating options, all the fancy like cafe stores and sushi now, and bakeries fancy. We have a U of L store in the front specific to the area we live in because it's right by the college, and all these different new things we were able to implement. So I spent my entire 2 years with this company there because we were going through a big remodel. Same managers normally because they try not to touch it because everything's changing. We were about 240 employees when I left, so it was my first introduction into like talent acquisition, hiring, training, development, that portion of HR. I really learned there because I was taking the store. I grew the workforce. We needed an extra 100 people to run all the new fancy things they were adding, new pharmacy, everything, just a gorgeous store. And we got a Starbucks that was new. And so we would go all the time, loved it. I worked at Starbucks in college. So, shout out to UK, Ovid's Cafe, Starbucks. I was there for my 4 years I was in college. I worked at Starbucks. And so I still know the ins and outs. I consider myself a top notch barista still. And so we would go all the time. And so one morning I went to Starbucks, and I was with a coworker who was a friend, not necessarily like outside of the store, but we had a relationship. So we go down, we were working on something. She had another position in the store and we were working on something together. And I'm like, before we get into this, like, let's go get some Starbucks. We need some sustenance. So we went to Starbucks. The cashier behind the Starbucks counter also still very excited to see me. As you guys heard from my memories, people love me. And, it's a blessing and a curse. People get excited to talk to me. I do bring a lot of energy. I like to have really exciting interactions. You try to pump up someone's day. So we're excited to see each other. Couldn't tell you what we were talking about, just having ourselves a grand time. We order our drinks. She makes the drinks. She passes them to us. And I'm tasting the drinks because I worked at Starbucks for like 5 years. So I taste the drinks and I'm like, oh, yeah, these are perfect. We have some conversations and I walk away. So I go on to enjoy the rest of my day. So the next day I come into work and my manager goes, I need to talk to you about something. And, anytime your manager calls you into their office and says, I need to talk to you about something, like your heart immediately drops.
Yeah. And that's but a fun one, though, if you are a manager, you get to do that and then tell them good things, too. Like, yes, that's a good way to flip,
Yeah, that's true.
Make it not so much of a stigma, I guess.
Yes. I know. I try to tell people, I'm like, every time I call you in here, it's not bad. And so I do try to, say sometimes it's good, but, it doesn't alleviate the drop feeling when your manager calls you into the office. But to make a long story short, we had failed to pay for the Starbucks drinks. And she told me because I had been buying Starbucks 2 to 3 times a day for the last 6 months and had been paying for all of those. And she was like, they are going to want to look into this. Like, I have to report it. You need to figure out what happened. So relationship there, that's, again, the value of a relationship. When you have a strong relationship, I was able to get the heads up about what was about to unfold in my career. So another manager, again, because we had a great relationship, helped me go to the cameras. We looked through the cameras. So when you watch the camera, you see me take my phone and flip it for her to scan to pay for my drinks. Because, the Starbucks, you scan in the app. And for whatever reason, she scans, but we keep talking, but the transaction doesn't process. And she doesn't notice, I don't notice. So we walk away, she walks away. So another barista who was not part of the interaction with us initially comes and sees that these drinks are still in the register and that they were not paid for. So she cashes it out and sets the receipt to the side and is and tells her manager, who does his research and realizes.
Sounds like a simple mistake. Just go, hey, all right, got it. I'll pay for him. Oops.
Not at all. He didn't even come to me, but it was not, it snowballed into something so big. They accused, and I work in HR, so that I understand processes and how things are supposed to work.
Yep.
But I was accused of stealing the drinks, which launched a internal investigation on me. And in addition to that mistake, they accused me because when you watch the tape, you see me drink out of my, the young lady I was with, her drink, and it's because I wanted to make sure it was made correctly. But they accused me of then having a relationship with her. So I just want that to land. So here I am, 29, 30. I think I'm 29. So here I am, 29, and I failed to pay for the drinks, and now it has snowballed into me potentially having a relationship with an hourly associate who works under me and is also the same sex as me. And so complete blow up, snowball, crazy week of this investigation. So, my boss comes down because even though my store manager is my boss, I have an HR boss. So my boss comes down and she's like, we need to talk to you. They talk to the young lady, which honestly, shout out to her because she is really who I think was able to get them off my back about it, because she was like, you guys are, stereotyping just because we're friends. And you see and we look alike and, we're the same, does not mean we're in a relationship. And I really think that advocacy on her part is what helped alleviate some of the weight. Cause it's hard when you're in it and you're the person accused to be no, what are you guys seeing? Right. But for her to be what are you guys doing? This is ridiculous. And, just because Whitney's a great manager and we have a great relationship doesn't mean that it's anything more. And the young man, he wasn't young, let me not be nice. The old man that accused us of this, was just a different type of person. And it was wild, but I was able, they had launched an internal investigation, and I had already had some doubts about having a long-term career in this role. simply because the work-life balance, it's really hard, like I had talked about earlier, to go home for holidays because anytime someone's eating, you're working. But this is what really solidified the I need to go somewhere else. I knew I was going to make it out of this investigation because you can't pin something on me that I was not doing. And I did own up, and I will own up. While it was an honest mistake, you can see me try to pay for my drinks, which I've done hundreds of times. It is also my responsibility as the manager to make sure that I get a receipt and that my transaction's complete.
I don't get receipts for like anything when I buy, but unless I'm like, for tax reasons or something.
But when you work in the store, I spend so much money in the store, and you have to make sure that you can validate, because just imagine owning a store of like day-to-day things and the amount of employee theft you handle. Like it was just a thing, right? I had terminated a young man for getting lunch from one of our lunch things and then scanning it as a banana. So when you go to and so it's just like a lot of employee theft that happens. So I understand that. So I want to like not discredit that. It's my responsibility as the employee, as the manager, to get my receipts and make sure that I'm paying for because I'm the example, right? I'm setting the example. And if the roles were reversed, I would have to coach someone else.
Yeah, so somewhat of a standard.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm the leader, right? I'm the role model. People are looking to me. I can't hold other people accountable for things I'm not doing. So 100%, that was an error on my part. I was so caught up in the moment and the happiness and the experience and the conversation that I didn't ensure that my drinks were paid for. And, a lot of ways people alleviate that is, they take the receipt and like tape it to the cup or tape it to the product. So you can always validate that you paid for it. Because when they told me, I said, no, I paid for that. But you can see me try, but the transaction didn't process.
Got it.
And so that was my fault. I will own up to that. And if it was handled with someone maybe that was in a better space in life, it might have been a simple Whitney. It didn't go through when we watched the camera. That didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
You need to pay for those drinks. But it blossomed into something that was so much bigger. But blessing in disguise, because I decided that I couldn't work there anymore. Because my reputation is very important to me. The only thing I can control is myself. And at the time, I didn't see how I would bounce back from this heavy of an accusation. Even though I knew I was going to clear it, I would have to still continue to work at this space, at this specific store, or they would send me to another store. But I was over it. Like when things like that happen, I was immediately disengaged, to, use a really big hot topic word. I was immediately disengaged. And so while I'm going through this investigation, I started applying for other jobs because, I have my master's degree. I've got some years of experience under my belt. Who wouldn't want to hire me, right? So I started applying for other jobs, and I on Indeed, shout out, and I find this company. My mom sends me a job in E-Town because my mom wants me to move back home. You guys know how moms are. So my mom's looking for jobs that are close to her. So she sends me this job in E-Town at a place called Matulsa that's looking for an HR representative. And so I apply, and I think I'm writing like a cover letter for them. And so I upload my resume, but I don't like hit submit in my world. But I'm like thinking I need to submit some other documents before it's like officially submitted. And so I get a call the next day that I need to drive to headquarters to have a face-to-face like discipline meeting to conclude this investigation. And as I'm driving to headquarters for this grocery store, I get a phone call from an E-Town number. So I answer it, and it's a recruiter from Matulsa. And I say, oh, I didn't think my application was submitted. I've been writing a cover letter. And she said, no, I got your resume. All I need is your resume. Do you have a few minutes to do a phone interview? And I'm like, absolutely. So I'm driving to a discipline meeting for my current job, doing an over-the-phone interview for a new job. And so I do the interview. She's like, okay, I want to schedule you in person. So she schedules me in person for maybe the following week early, a 7:30 a.m. interview, maybe 7:15. So like really early in the morning interview. And I'm like, okay. So I go through the discipline meeting. They grill me, ask me a lot of questions about like my relationship with the two employees, as well as the Starbucks drinks. I'm there like 45 minutes. And, as a HR professional, it is nice to have the experience to be on the other side, you know? And so it was heavy, but again, I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. And I respect their need to do a thorough investigation. So whatever. So, I do it. It's fine. They send me out. They're like, we'll let you know our decision. So I'm not in the clear. So, they send me out. So days go by. I go do the interview. Um, Wonderful woman that I met. I lived 45 minutes away. I lived in Louisville at the time. Interviews in E-Town, for those of you familiar with Kentucky. And so I leave my house really early. I drive down. I get there about 20 minutes early. And I sign in, and I'm sitting in the lobby, and this woman comes walking to the lobby, and so she looks and smiles at me, and then she does a double take, and she said, "Are you my 7:15 interview?" And I stood up. I'm like, "Yes, my name's Whitney." I shake her hand, and she goes, "Oh, okay." She goes, "Give me a minute." So I had beat her to work, and that's when I knew that I had the job. Right? It's the little things like that, the little efforts of professionalism that put you above other candidates, you guys.
And that was Linda, I'm guessing.
No, that was Teresa, because
Teresa,
remember
okay.
when Linda started, she sat in the cubicle across
That's
from
right.
me. She was not in a big boss's office yet. That was Teresa, who's a fantastic HR professional, still in Louisville, big mentor, taught me a lot as well. And we'll move past this. Let's get this. So anyway, I interview. They call and offer me the job. Maybe 2 days later, day later, almost doubled my salary from where my current role is. So it's a no-brainer. I get to move home. They double my salary. It's fine. The same day, my nephew had also been born. Shout out to Baby Corn. And so I was driving to Alabama to go see him for the second time in his life. He's like a week old, 2 weeks old, and I'm driving to see my baby. And my boss calls me and says, "I just wanted to let you know the resolution." So I got two calls same day. I get the call offering me the job. So I'm celebrating. I haven't said anything to anybody because I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to step away from my current position. Then my current boss calls me and says, "We concluded the investigation. There will be, no other repercussions, but I am going to have to put a written counseling in your file. So, I don't get in any trouble because I haven't done it." Yeah. The only thing I've done wrong is failing to make sure my transaction went through. And so they got to put a note in my file.
Sounds like
whatever,
there's a sniper up there.
And so, okay. And so I was just like, okay. So I hang up with her. I get to Alabama. I borrow my brother's computer, type up my resignation letter, and email it same day. So they call me and tell me the investigation's over. They have to put a note in my file that'll follow me my entire career at this company, which hurts me because, again, I have not really done too much wrong. And really the note is about the accusation of the relationship. Like, it wasn't even really about the Starbucks, but they have to note both. And so I'm like, it's okay. And I send in my 2 weeks notice, same day. I'm like, I'm over this. So I put my 2 weeks in. And so that was just a testament of doors opening and doors closing, right? So again, I mentioned, I am a Christian. I believe in God, and I believe in divine intervention. And when something's ordained by God, it's effortless, right? Doors open and doors close. So it was very simultaneous for me. So I stepped away from the grocery store. I left the right way, built a relationship, did my 2 weeks. I didn't do anything. I didn't have an outburst or emotional response to this. I still did everything very professional because you never know when you're going to need. And, I knew they were just doing their jobs, but I did put my 2 weeks notice in, and we had the grand opening. So my last day was the day after the grand opening. So, I was taking a store through a big remodel. We had the grand opening. It was this big ordeal. It was thousands of people, thousands of executives, thousands of leaders, a lot of pats on the back. I got to reap the rewards of my hard work for 2 years. And then the next day was my last day. And so it was a really nice closed chapter of my life that I really don't ever have to reopen. Even though I do still shop this grocery store, still have a great relationship. We can only get delivery where I live now, which I'm fascinated by. So, but that was a really, really big portion of my career, right? When I think about some of the lessons, that was the biggest lesson, is you have to be mindful. You have to make sure that you're on your P's and Q's, and you can only be responsible for yourself. And if I would have just made sure that transaction went through, maybe I would have been able to miss some of this drama, but it probably would have just came around in some other aspect. So you live and you learn. So I got to move on to something bigger and better. I spent 4 years with Matulsa, which we'll say their name because they're a fantastic automotive company. They taught me a lot, really developed my specific HR career. So there I was an HR shift rep. I was on second shift, and I spent my last year maybe on first shift. I was there through COVID. So I looked up at one point and I was doing payroll for hourly and salary, and I was a shift rep for like first shift and third shift. Like I was doing like four people's jobs at once, because COVID was crazy. But I went through COVID there. It was the first job I had that allowed me to really specify the HR track. So I wasn't also running a grocery store or also working with kids, or also managing
Yeah, focused on the
a
craft.
project. Yeah,
Yep.
I got to I was only HR, so it was also a union, so I'm employee relations. I'm disciplines, I'm leave of absences, I'm development opportunities, I'm job posting. It was about 2,500 people, so it's a pretty big site. And so I learned so much. It really sharpened me as an HR professional. I had a lot of mentors there: Linda, Teresa, Christy, Angelia, a lot of people, Liz, who taught me, both Liz's, my career and helped me understand. You learn a lot when you're with people. Iron sharpens iron, right? So you're with people who are HR
Shamwa.
professionals. Yes. So you learn a lot. And so I spent wonderful years there. Did highs and lows. I had a lot of personal losses. We had some professional ones. And again, I went through COVID. And that's probably when things started to get a little crazy. And I was like, okay, I might need to get somewhere where I can be a little calmer, because, the teams were changing, and you end up with a lot of work on your plate, and, things just start
Teams
to
are changing. What do you mean?
So like leaders were leaving, bosses were changing, my peers were changing.
Great
I
resignation stuff. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I mean, I was about to say I probably had in that position, I had from my start as a shift rep, I had three people change in just my immediate peers
Yeah.
in probably a year and a half. And so it's a lot of, it was, the great resignation really did impact like the team, and, really four or five, if you go outside of my peers, but talk about some of the work, that was on my plate. And, you stay because you're loyal, right? So, and I stayed, let me say this, I stayed because I'm loyal to a fault sometimes, but, I had really great relationships. I really enjoyed the work. And so I wasn't necessarily looking to leave. I was looking to grow there. And so, I had a lot of people go on to bigger and better. And so I got to do, a couple of other things, but I was in the same cubicle for 4 years. Um, and you just look up one day and you're like, okay, maybe it's time. Like, is my time here done? Something just moves in your spirit, and you're like, okay, I think it's time. Also, just shout out to Matulsa. It's where I met my fiance. So I did work in HR, and he was in IT. It took me probably about 4 months to even realize that he liked me. I'm really oblivious to those things sometimes, until he brought me in a bag of grandma's cookies one day. We have a really cute meet cute story. And that's when I realized he was hitting on me, because food has always been my love language. And so I also knew then, because while there wasn't necessarily a policy, it's not the most professional move to be in HR and dating someone who works at a company, because if they want to complain about him, it's hard to come and complain about the your employee, that, because like you can't come complain about Tony to HR because Tony's girlfriend works in HR, and so
Yeah.
I was like, okay, it's time. I really wanted to see where this was going. I felt really good about it, and so I was like, all right. So organic intervention, ordained intervention again. I checked my LinkedIn and had a message from a recruiter for a really big company. I mean, big. That was awesome. And very organically over the holiday season, I did a couple of interviews. One the day before Thanksgiving. My first one was the day before Thanksgiving. And in January, I transitioned to a different company and had to leave Matulsa behind, but still great relationships. As Linda mentioned in her memory, I still talk to them. I felt really guilty when I left, probably the first like 4 months. So I would still drop off like donuts and Diet Coke, because I am a foodie. You know that from working with me. Like I will bring a box of donuts to work in a minute, try to make somebody's day. I probably should DoorDash them some donuts. I might need to do that Monday. Just to, I miss you guys. Here's some donuts. And so, because the relationships were really strong, I learned a lot. I owe a lot. My growth, my development in the HR world really came from that team. And so, I'm a gifts is my love language, along with like words of affirmation. I'm really all of them, but when you
Yeah.
appreciate someone, I try to make sure they know. So I would still drop off like Diet Cokes and donuts and McDonald's fries. And so a really good time with that team. So I've had a lot of career influences, a lot of mentors. A lot of mentors came out of Matulsa's team. And so really excited. And now, I work for a great company, brought me to Florida. I get to go to the beach on the weekends. I'm 20 minutes from my mom. So my mom got married and moved to Florida while I was transitioning roles. So we lived apart for about a year. And then the opportunity for me to come to Florida came up. And I was like, okay, God, okay, is this it? And so now my mom lives 20 minutes up the road from me again. And, I'm getting married in September. So I'm in a growth season. I mean, you and I have talked about this before, but, there's your life, ebbs and flows. Sometimes
Yep, the
there are lows.
phases.
Yep. And sometimes there are highs. And currently I'm in a high. I have a new position. I've moved to Florida. I have a fiance. We're getting married in 9 days. My mom is up the street. My family is great. Everybody's about to be, I have 60 people coming to Jamaica
Goodness.
to watch us for 30 minutes get married on the beach. And so, you know, ebbs and flows. And so, that's what I want you guys to take away from all those stories is, sometimes life gets really low and, sometimes you make mistakes and, they have repercussions and, sometimes you just have to own up to those repercussions. It's not the end of the world. If I would have decided HR wasn't for me when I was leaving the grocery store after that investigation, like where would I be today? And so it's not the end of the world. You just have to keep the faith and just keep progressing, keep moving forward. Don't give up. It's not over till you quit. And I saw this quote the other day and I was like, Tony would love that. I'm gonna start like taking pictures and it was like, it's not over when you fail, it's over when you quit. And I was like, that is so good. And
How you
so
respond, right?
yes. And so, I didn't quit, kept it moving. And so now I'm on a fantastic, uptick in life. I'm in a growth season and things are well.
Gotcha. You're lots of different jobs, lots of ebbs and flows. But the transition, biggest job transition learning for you.
Okay. It's take the leap of faith. And that's how I got to the position I'm in now. Because again, I told you, I'm almost loyal to a fault. I wasn't sure what my life would look like post Matulsa. I had been there for 4 years. It's where my family was from. It's where I grew up. Like it was really comfortable. And I could have stayed there 10 more years and I would have been comfortable. Maybe not 100% satisfied, but comfortable. But you have to take the leap of faith when you want more. I knew I wanted to move. I wanted to go to a company that would allow me to experience like different areas. Matulsa is a mega company and they're awesome, but they're global. They're a Mexico-based company, but I don't speak fluent Spanish yet. Working on it, and so I knew I couldn't like go to Mexico. So, the places I could go and still support their company were limited, and so I knew I wanted to get somewhere where I could live somewhere fun, and have a life outside of work and grow my family and raise kids. And so just you have to take the leap of faith. You can't stay comfortable. You got to get uncomfortable sometimes. And so when I was approached and decided maybe that it was time for me to transition careers from Matulsa, I really just took a leap of faith. I was like, okay, it's something new. It gave me a 45-minute commute. So I immediately wasn't comfortable again. I wasn't up the street from my home. I didn't know what it would look like for me, my relationship, my family, but I knew that it was getting me in a position that I wanted to be. Like it was getting me closer, to somewhere fun and to being able to relocate and, go somewhere bigger and better and less work, more money, more vacation, more benefits. The workforce is really transitioning. I'm a millennial, but as far as, people like, we don't stay with companies because we're loyal. We go where we're treated the best, and I was ready to be like really like treated well and, own my work. And so I took the leap of faith and to get me into the position that I met you and where I am now. And it was definitely the biggest transition, biggest risk. When I transitioned to Matulsa, it wasn't a risk. I was over it. Decision was made. It happened really organically. If it wasn't Matulsa, it would have been somewhere else. And so I'm grateful it was Matulsa. That was definitely, best case scenario for me. But when I left Matulsa, I wasn't authentically ready. I just knew that it was time and it was an opportunity that I probably couldn't pass up to help me progress my career. And it was definitely a risk that paid off,
Good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Take the leap of faith for everyone who's listening.
There's a book about that. It's called The Big Leap.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Tell me, what do you call them? Low cost returns?
Low cost U-turn.
Yes. So that's
versus a big one. When you're just kind of how the way I work is we don't have to have 100% to make a decision, right? 70% let's do it now. But there are some instances where that 70% now, the high cost, like hey, there's probably going to be a big ramification if you make this decision based off your 70% now theory. That's a big cost. So low cost U-turns are a good way, I think, personally, to experiment, to keep the ball moving. So
Yeah, so I sit on that, but it was a low cost. I left, Matulsa the correct way, so if it didn't turn out like pay off, I'm sure they would have welcomed me back. But and people, I work in HR, so I see a lot of people not leave companies the correct way. And so, it's very important to me to leave companies the correct way because you never know, the relationships will be valuable.
yeah.
You may not need to work there again, but you may need a reference. And the communities are small. So even though I may not be applying for a job with that company, the person hiring you is going to see, and I answer a lot of people, Matulsa's big. And so a lot of people will say, hey, this person said they worked at Matulsa, what can you tell me? And so it's very important, that the relationships are there and that you're always being professional, setting your best foot forward. And so, very important to me. So
Yep, reputation. You said that in the beginning, right?
Yes. And the relationship, right? Relationship currency. Leadership is influence.
No doubt. All right, I got some rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask these as if, and I think I found all these questions together for, these are good questions to ask your kids before putting them to bed or before they go to sleep. So the first one is, if you could fly anywhere like a bird, where would you fly?
If I could fly anywhere like a bird. Okay, I'm exhausted already, so I can't go too far because I'm a bird. Even though, birds can take a break. Hawaii's first. Hawaii's coming to but I also would maybe go to Egypt. I have a friend in Egypt. So maybe one of those. And like Oahu, Hawaii, because the food is fantastic there.
Got it. All right. If you opened a store, what would you sell?
Okay, leather handbags made by my friend Pancho in Guatemala. Shout out to Pancho's Bags. He mails me bags every now and then. I help him kind of push them through the U.S. because he doesn't really have a market here. But it would be slow fashion, so it would 100% be items handmade that have really cute stories. So we're gonna have like Carissa earrings, made with love Carissa earrings, Pancho's bags from the USA, and other really cute things made by people who are paying bills in their homes and not like mega corporations.
Gotcha. Next one. What do you think is better than others? This is that weird one where you get to ask your kids when they go to sleep to figure out what they're thinking about, right?
What do I think is better than others?
Very broad.
What do I think is better than others? I don't know. Maybe my growing season. I kind of spoke on that, but I think, and I hope that's an inspiration to someone who's listening. So, life ebbs and flows. And so sometimes you look up and your season's not as growing as the person next to you. So like I'm in a growing season now and, somebody hasn't met their husband or they haven't been able to start a family or they're in a job that they're not really excited about. Like things change, right? Things grow. So just hold the path. Don't give up. It'll change, right? Joy comes in the morning. And so I'm in a growing season. So I'm probably a little happier than most currently. And I understand it's a roller coaster. And if you're someone who's not as happy, it's coming. So don't give up.
Good stuff. If you could become an animal, what would you be?
Okay. I'm going to go koala bear because they're really cute.
Interesting.
And, I think they sleep during the day and they eat a lot of eucalyptus. Maybe not, but they eat a lot of eucalyptus and they just climb around and they're really cute. What complaints do we have about koala bears? None. They're super cute, fluffy, and they can eat all the time and they just get fluffy. So koala bear.
Okay. If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
If I could have a superpower, I think it would be, maybe I would want to read minds. Okay. Maybe I would want to read minds, or I would want to be invisible. If I read minds, I would use it for bad too. So I think we talked about this before, but it would not 100% be for good. Like if I could read minds, I would be like a lawyer, right? So I would be able to read like what they're not telling me so I could win all my cases.
Yeah, that would be a crazy superpower to have.
Yes, that's it. Because you always know authentically. I think you'd have to get used to.
You know who your snakes are right away.
Yes, exactly. And you have to get used to even the people you love and trust the most having some negative thoughts. I think that's the downfall is, like sometimes it doesn't matter how much you love someone. Sometimes they're getting on your nerves. And I would have to hear that secretly So I would have to really teach myself, to realize like who says more positive things, like understanding, like a 70-30 rule, like they are allowed to be annoyed with me at some time. For the most part, they have my my good. They have, for the most part, they have like my I don't know what I'm trying to say there. They have my better interest at heart,
Hmm.
but you do learn about the snakes, and so people who are like trying to pull one over on me, I would know. So I would
Gotcha.
be like a lawyer. Also, I feel like law school would be really easy because I would just be able to read like the other students' thoughts as we're taking tests, or
Sure.
like my professor. So like I would just go through life succeeding, and so really there's no downfall.
Yeah.
I think the downfall is you would hear negative things, but I would be able to turn some of my other powers for good. So
Gotcha. Yeah, that'd definitely be a good superpower to have.
yeah.
Let's see. What's the current song you have on repeat?
Okay. There's a song called "On My Mama" by Victoria Monet. And that song I have been listening on repeat. She's an R&B singer. She's fantastic. She's up and coming, and she has a couple of other songs I really like. But "On My Mama" is the one that I'm currently on repeat. The first song I ever heard from her is I think it's called. Oof, I don't want to get us in trouble. I think it's called. Hold on, let me find it. I think it's called FUCK,
Okay.
but
So an acronym for something different.
it stands for Friends You Can Keep. So if you listen to the song, but that was the first song I ever heard from her, and that was probably 3 years ago. So I'm really excited to see that she's like really growing and gaining popularity. And she has a new song. She has a couple of new songs out, but "On My Mama" I love, and
Okay.
I've been listening. And that'll tell people when people listen to this and hear that song, it's going to tell them a lot about who I am.
Awesome. Well, cool. That's it of the rapid fires. Let's see. Um, what's the biggest struggle that you have in the HR profession in general?
I have two. There's two. So my biggest struggle is, and it's both of them are how people interact with me. My first one is you have to have really tough conversations, and you have to make people upset. So for instance, whenever you are disciplining someone or terminating someone, you're the person delivering the message, and sometimes that can be taken really bad.
Yeah.
You're the villain, because like if it's not my decision, there's a company policy, but I'm the villain because I'm delivering the message, and that is never easy. I've been doing it for 8 years now. I've had doors slammed, I've had stuff knocked off my desk, I've been cussed out, I've been called names. Like it never gets easy. And I tried. People have kind of talked. I do try really hard to make sure that I'm still able to empower someone, even though I'm disciplining them. And that's kind of a thing I tell people. I try to teach to some of the leaders that work with me is you can discipline someone and still make them feel empowered, but it's really hard. Hi, it's really hard to do. She's so gorgeous. It's really hard to do to this day. And so that's probably the hardest part about HR is changing someone's life or disciplining them because you're the villain. A lot of times people don't look up and take ownership for their actions. So even though they're the person who's violated the policy, whether it's like attendance or, aggression, workplace violence, like I didn't lead you to do these things, but I'm the person that has to execute the discipline and, inform you of the decision on behalf of the company. And that never gets easy. I'm always stressed out about it. And people will always talk about how positive I am, but it gets really hard. And then the other thing is help working with leaders and trying to help them understand ways they could be better. And then sometimes like not doing them. So, the hardest part of being in HR and like people management is sometimes you don't see eye to eye with people who are more like business focused.
Hmm.
Like I'm people over profit, and sometimes people are like profit over people. They're like, no, we should work on that seventh day, or we shouldn't pay them for that day that we had to be off. And I'm just like, no, like, and so that gets really frustrating. That gets really frustrating. Is that Bella?
This Belle. Yeah.
Hi,
It's my
Belle.
youngest. Can you
Hi.
wave?
How are
She's
you?
saying hi.
Gosh.
There you
Hello,
go.
sweetie.
All right. Give us some time.
And so those are my two. Those are my two. So it's really hard to deliver really tough conversations, and then
Yeah.
and then the leadership development part, because it's really hard. It's not. I feel like while HR is taken more serious than it has been in the past, it's still not as serious as some other aspects of business. And so sometimes it's hard to disagree with the decision a company's making, but still having to have like a unified front as you execute it.
Gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
Biggest struggle for you today in general?
Uh, okay. Well, I'm 9 days out from my wedding, and so I did pick up my wedding dress and it did fit. But just on a personal note, my biggest struggle to date is my weight. I'm very hungry as we speak. I want to eat, but I can't. When we hang up, I'll have like something healthy because I'm just trying to be better. So at least my wedding dress fits. So think about me in 9 days because I'm going to have as many donuts as my body can tolerate after my wedding. The morning of, because at this point it shouldn't turn into fat. I'll just be in my stomach, so my dress should still shut. So that's probably my biggest struggle. If that's just what comes to mind. And then, I am getting married and I just met a young lady. This is about to get deep. I am getting married. And actually, you're a really good mentor for me in this aspect. You don't know this, but I use you as a role model because I'm really nervous about my marriage and its success.
Mm-hmm.
And I just met a person 2 days ago, and she was married and with her ex for 12 years, and her divorce just got finalized.
Yeah.
And so the fear that my marriage won't succeed because I'm about to embark into this new, and just the idea that I'm going to look up in 4 or 5 years and like he won't be there, or I won't want him to be there, or he won't want to be there, really stresses me out. Like just how things can change and how people grow, and so I'm very apprehensive about how to have a successful marriage. And I think we're doing okay. We're really honest with ourselves. We do really focus on communication. I talked to him about how we need to get like a coach. So my aunt has been married to her husband for about 12 years, and they are really strong role models, and they do a lot of like marriage seminars and counseling. And so I always tell Francisco, who's my fiance, that I want us to get like a marriage coach, and I want us to have someone who can help us like talk through really difficult, like disagreements and arguments. And I do think that at our core we have a really strong foundation. Because I never feel unsafe, and that's a new feeling for me in this relationship. So even when we argue, like I never feel like it's the end. I don't feel like he'd rather be somewhere else. But the fear is there because in today's society, you meet so many more people who have had unsuccessful marriages than you do that have had successful marriages.
Yeah.
And they tell you it's just a decision. Like you just have to make the decision to stay married. So I'm going to hold on really hard to that. But as I am 9 days out from my marriage, my wedding, I'm nervous at what it's going to look like on the other side, and if I'll be able to start a family and like what that looks like. So that's what keeps me up at night.
I got you.
And so, yeah.
Well,
and you have, in my world anyway, because I don't know you guys too well, but you have a really successful family and marriage. And, I know that you and your wife have made some commitments to each other that like influence outside decisions.
We've had challenges, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
And she'll tell you too. It's
Yeah.
definitely, you got to keep working on it just like anything, right?
Yeah. And so
one of your big inspirations, quote lookers that you used to have, at least I remember, is Maya Angelou.
I love her.
And there's a lot of things that come to mind throughout the memories of tie-ins to who Whitney is. But on courage is, this is a Maya Angelou quote.
Yes.
Courage is the most important of all virtues because without courage, you can't practice any other virtue consistently.
That's true.
You can practice any virtue erratically, but nothing consistently without courage. So
that's true.
There's a Maya Angelou quote for your.
I like it. Thank you.
Struggle.
See, I had and I think about that. We're so introspective. I think you and I, because I love Maya Angelou. I've never heard that quote before, so I'll have to kind of look that up. Maybe add that to my repertoire. But I had the Phenomenal Woman poem hanging up in my office. And I think that's what used to come and see. And then the Still I Rise poem, which just talk about, Still I Rise is probably could be a poem about courage. It's about, overcoming and still, even though people want to see me not succeed, like still I rise. And that is definitely a theme for my life. And again, because you have to be courageous, you have to make the decision, and you can only control yourself, right? So you can't quit. And so that's why I love Maya Angelou, because her life, there's so much you can relate to. She's got a series of books, of biographies. There's like 7 that just chronologize her life. Mm-hmm. Just like maybe like her childhood through adulthood and like her relationships and her experiences and her job, and what she learned. And it's so good. And so I'm a huge fan of hers. She's an African American female as well, so it's really easy to relate, and just aspire to, be able to pull yourself up and encourage yourself. Like, I am a phenomenal woman, still I rise. You have to teach your children, and you have to teach yourself like to love yourself, because if you don't coach and love yourself, then the world will teach you to hate yourself. And so I use Maya Angelou for that a lot. Like, it's a war cry, like, still I rise. I'm a phenomenal woman, like, you're gonna be okay. I'm a woman phenomenally, like, you're gonna be okay. And it's a war cry, because you have to teach yourself that you're gonna be okay, because the world will teach you that you won't, or the world won't help you. You got to do it yourself. And so,
two more Maya Angelou quotes, and then we'll close it out with a couple final questions. But on our influences, you are the sum of the total everything you've ever seen, heard, eaten, smelled, been told, forgot. It's all there. Everything
yes.
influences each of us. And because of that, I try to make sure my experiences are positive. Last one on her life's mission. My mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive.
Yes.
And to do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style. So
That's it, right? That's literally it. We're not here, we're thriving, Tony. We're here, we're rising, we're thriving, we're phenomenal, and we get to influence that and make that decision. So,
yep.
100%. She's
And
definitely a role model.
Definitely some themes that came up throughout the talk already today. So that's why I
Yeah.
talked about those.
Yes.
Last one. So you're positive, you're jovial, you spread the love to others. You must have a daily affirmation. What is that for you?
So I do have a daily affirmation. I think I have to tell myself daily, you're gonna okay. I have almost cried like 3 times today. Okay, I'm sorry. So my daily affirmation is, you deserve this. You are enough. Like, you deserve this. You are enough. Like, you're here. You deserve this. You deserve everything you have. Like, you're enough. And that's what I have to kind of tell myself. It's really crazy, like the imposter syndrome. And, I kind of touched on that because I am in a growing season. And I remember what it was like to not be in a growing season. And so sometimes I feel like I don't deserve this, or like, is this really happening? Do I deserve to be this happy in a relationship? Do I deserve to be this happy in my career? Do I deserve to have this new home in this new state? And it makes you really like doubt it. You feel like an imposter. And so I have to tell myself, like, you've worked really hard. You deserve this. You're here. You're worth it. Like, this is yours. You deserve it. And so that's what I have to kind of coach myself through day to day.
Awesome. No doubt. It's good stuff. All right. So what's final one? What's your price of admission?
I think that, that's so deep. I think my price of admission is just, let me see how I want to say this. I think my price of admission is just some of the self-doubt that I have to tackle. Like, my price of admission, what I paid to be here, is just, some of the sacrifices I've had to make, some of the experiences I've had, some of the things I've had to really pull myself through. You have some really dark times, and you have to coach yourself through those. So you just have to remember, it's not you, it's how you respond, right? It's not where you fail, it's where you quit. And you can't let other people make those decisions for you, right? So you can't let other people tell you who you're going to be. This, what you're worth, what you're ready to do. When you decide it's time, it's time. When you're ready, you're ready. And I think I probably missed a lot of opportunities listening to other people, and not understanding that I'm the only person that can influence where I go in life. And so I think that is my price of admission, just the sacrifices I've made, some of the opportunities I've missed, before I learned that it's all about me. Nobody can tell you any different. Nobody can control where you go, what you do. I rise. I'm a woman phenomenally. phenomenally I'll be. And so you just have to remind yourself of that. So that it took a lot to get me to a place where I can root for myself. And I think rooting for yourself, what it takes to get there, you got to root for yourself. And
Gotcha.
yeah, a lot of sacrifices to get me to a place where I was Team Whitney, like through and through. She can do it.
Still I Rise. That's your title.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
Well, cool. Anything else you wanted to share before we close this thing up?
I don't think so. Always super fun. Really excited to hear your story. I listen, waiting for you to share us like tidbits. So when you're ready, we can record. I'll be you if you want, and we can record your
Okay.
your price of admission.
Yeah, mine's coming out through every single episode. So
Yeah, it is. It is. But no, I'm glad. I'm grateful that, our relationship is very important to me. I consider you a friend and like a mentor. And so I'm glad that I was able to be a guest. And I love that you have a podcast that's so successful. And I'm excited to see you like super famous one day doing your podcast. And so,
yeah,
I'm grateful.
there are times when I'm like, oh, that'd be cool if this thing could get big. But at the end of the day, there's all the other benefits that come with it that
Yeah.
are the reason why I keep doing it. And if it can help one person, if it can save one person, then it's a win. And there's just
It's also,
so many other benefits personally to me
yeah.
with it. So
I think it's really good, and it's a super awesome record keeping, and that's why I was definitely down to do it as well, because I've experienced a lot of loss, and so I'm like, we'll look up in 15 years, and if something happens to me, like they'll be able to like, oh, she did a podcast, and like they'll always be able to hear this. Like it's storytelling is such an important aspect of like legacy, and remembering families and remembering cultures. We wouldn't know anything about past cultures if it wasn't for storytelling.
yeah,
We have the internet, and people write things down, but before it was word of mouth and it was letters and journals, and this is, the modern day way to get your story out there and to, help influence what people will hear down the line about your
yeah.
life and your legacy. And so
Grandkids could listen to it, right?
I love it. I know, I wish I had some podcasts from some of the people that I loved who have left. We really cherish their pictures and their videos. And so I think it's super awesome to have people put their story down like this, because it'll definitely always be, something their families will seek and they will seek and they'll be able to share. And so I think it's a really powerful tool. And I, want you to feel supported and know that I definitely always want like to be there if I can for you, because I really value our friendship. So
yeah, no, I really appreciate all your teachings and coachings over the past couple of years, for sure.
yeah,
So thank you for that. And
they went by really fast.
I did, and
It goes by
every
so
year gets a
quick.
little bit faster, right?
That's true. It's getting crazy.
Well, thanks, thank Francisco for your time today. I know y'all got a big day coming up here in 9 days
We
in
do.
Jamaica, so enjoy it. And yeah, thanks again.
All right. I appreciate it.
All right, take care.
You too.